purpose of this presentation is to help the university community understand about institutional accreditation that was signalled in the strategic plan. The accreditation I'm talking about is called WASC, WSCUC. WSCUC is an acronym. The W stands for the Western Association of Schools and Colleges, and the SCUC stands for the Senior College and Universities Commission. So WASC is a whole of institution accreditation that is provided through this association in the western part of the United States, California, Hawaii, and some international institutions, including USP. The reason USP is seeking WASC accreditation is to try and provide confidence to its stakeholders about the quality of its entire operation, not just about programs. So it's important to understand that institutional accreditation is quite different from program accreditation. Let me explain why that is the case. They use what they call standards of accreditation and criteria for review. And there's 4 standards. I'll go through each of those standards in turn. Standard 1 is the first standard, stated as being defining the institutional purposes and ensuring the educational objectives. What that means is that whether the university has a mission, sees itself as a higher education institution, and has clear objectives about how it goes about its business. Within each standard, there's a series of what they call criteria for review, which are grouped under various headings. For standard 1, there's 2 headings. The institutional purposes. An example of criteria for review there is this one, 1.1. The university has formally approved an appropriate statements of purpose that define its values and character. The second heading here is integrity and transparency. And the criteria for review here is that the university has diversity policies, programs and practices. So that's standard 1. Standard 2 is how the university achieves its educational objectives through its core functions. So in other words, how do we go about making sure that we achieve those objectives by our normal day-to-day business? Fundamentally, this standard is about teaching and learning. And there's 3 headings here as well. One of them is teaching and learning, and an example of a criteria for review there is 2.1. Programs are appropriate in content, standards, degree level, and there's sufficiently qualified faculty. By faculty in the US, that means academic staff. The second heading under Standard 2 is scholarship and creative activity. So an example here is criteria for review 2.9. Faculty evaluation links scholarship, teaching, student learning and service. So in other words, at a university level, faculty, here I'll remind you again means academic staff, look at scholarship, teaching and student learning and service, not just one part of the activity. The third heading under Standard 2 is student learning success. An example of criteria for review here is that 2.13, appropriate student support services are planned, implemented and evaluated. Standard 3 is developing and applying resources and organisational structures to ensure quality and sustainability. So in other words, once we've established our core activities and ensured that they meet the objectives of the institution, how do we then ensure we have systems in place to ensure we have sufficient resources to ensure a quality and sustainable program delivery? Under Standard 3, there's some headings. Faculty and staff, this is academic and professional staff. An example here of a criteria for review is 3.2. Faculty and staff policies, practices and evaluation are well developed and applied. Another heading here is physical and information resources. And this here is looking at how the university manages its finances. So an example of the criteria for review here is 3.5. The facilities, services, information technology resources are sufficient and aligned with the objectives. And the third heading here is organisational structures and decision-making processes. The key feature of this here is that the WASC Commission want to ensure that staff own the curriculum, they call it. So the idea here is that the academic staff themselves, as experts in the areas of discipline such as chemistry, accountancy, law, are the people that drive the curriculum making decisions. So an example of criteria for review here is 3.7. Clear, consistent decision-making structures and processes, priority to sustain institutional capacity and educational effectiveness. So there's a feature here on educational effectiveness, which is how do we know that all of our business and activities are resulting in educational effectiveness, in other words, quality learning. Standard 4 is about quality. and it's stated as being creating an organisation committed to quality assurance, institutional learning and improvement. And there's two headings here. Quality assurance processes, and our criteria for review here is 4.2, sufficient institutional research capacity, data is disseminated and incorporated in planning and decision making, and institutional research effectiveness is assessed. So this is about us understanding the business, as I mentioned at the beginning of this video. The second heading here is institutional learning and improvement. And our criteria for review here is 4.5, appropriate stakeholders involved in regular assessment of institutional effectiveness. So this means that the university involves all of its stakeholders in evaluation of its effectiveness as a higher education institution. So that's sort of a summary of how the panel will consider whether the university is worthy of gaining accreditation. I just want to now tell you a little bit about the timeline of events that's involved universities seeking this accreditation. It's important to understand the difference between program accreditation and whole of institution accreditation like WASC. This is a much more complex task because we look at every facet of the university's operation. And this started some time ago. The university began in the late 1990s first thinking about and having discussions about this accreditation process. It wasn't until nearly 10 years later in 2009 that we first began to engage with this more deeply as a result of the Marshall Islands, which is strong connections with the US. And the university at that time was considering expanding membership to other nations, and one of the reasons that might be helped by WASC accreditation is that we will have a greater sense of recognition of our qualifications and our quality in the US. So WASC has a process where international institutions are required to undergo a diagnostic visit prior to eligibility application. This process at USP began in 2012, but was put on hold for a short time because the university engaged in a further academic quality audit by the New Zealand Academic Quality Agency in 2013. WASC conducted the diagnostic visit in 2014 and the application for eligibility was made in 2015. WASC granted USP eligibility in late 2015. That meant we were now formally approved to apply for accreditation. That accreditation process began soon after and resulted in the university submitting an application for accreditation in February 2016. The university then, in order to improve its chances of gaining accreditation, submitted a self-review report to a mock accreditation panel. And that accreditation panel engaged in a mock visit to the university to try and mimic the processes we go through when we conduct the full accreditation visit scheduled for April 2018. So the current status of the university's accreditation is that we have submitted our full report. We have engaged in a mock visit and used the understandings and learnings from that to improve our report, and that we have a scheduled visit in April 2018 of the full accreditation panel. So what does this mean for staff at the university? After the accreditation visit, the university will receive a report on how the panel believed it meets or does not meet the criteria for review. There's a total of 39 criteria for review. Each of those criteria is examined with our evidence, and then from that the panel makes a judgment as to whether we satisfy that particular criteria. We can satisfy the criteria in one of two ways, by what WASC refer to as substantial compliance or minimal compliance. Minimal compliance is where there is evidence that the institution understands the principles and intentions of each of the criteria of review at a sufficient level to support continued development. What that means is that we have an understanding of the criteria of review that is shared by WASC. We've made some progress in addressing those criteria, but we're not fully meeting those criteria. Commonly here at this level, then the key leaders, managers of the university and leadership positions, understand the concepts, but other levels of the organisation, such as the academic staff or professional staff, don't necessarily understand those criteria and don't understand what WASC is all about in a way that is consistent with the leaders' views. So that is a reasonable position in that the university is fairly well set up and has understood the criteria and has got some good processes in place, but it's not shared across the entire institution. The second outcome is substantial compliance. If the university gains accreditation, then it must demonstrate substantial compliance for each and every one of the criteria for review. And that means the concepts, the intent is understood, articulated clearly, right through the operation of the university and is thoroughly and widely understood across the university. And understanding the concepts is then held at multiple relevant organisational levels. In other words, everyone in the university understands what WASC accreditation is about. When the accreditation visit occurs, WASC have a very detailed schedule of who they will meet. And consistent with the notion of minimal and substantial compliance, they will be looking to see whether everyone in the university understands the university systems in the same way the university leaders say they do. So what WASC does, they will meet senior leaders, people like the DVCs, the deans, the associate deans, and they also meet staff and students. And they're looking here to see whether there's a shared understanding and a shared view of quality, of outputs. So in summary, the purpose of WASC accreditation is to provide confidence to all of our stakeholders that the university has at its heart of its operations quality across every aspect of the university's business. The important point I made just recently when I was talking about substantive versus minimal compliance is that this is a whole of institution commitment. So that means not just the senior leadership team driving this process, but all of the staff, students and stakeholders of the university committing to quality. And that's why the university is seeking this accreditation. So we need the support of all the university community, staff, students and stakeholders to ensure that we do our best to achieve this accreditation. Thank you.